What if the reason you feel exhausted after travel, mentally foggy during night shifts, or unable to sleep at the right time has less to do with sleep itself and more to do with a biological clock that's completely out of sync? Because here's what most people misunderstand about jet lag, shift work, and sleeplessness. The problem is not simply that you're tired. The problem is that your brain and body no longer agree on what time it is. And when that internal timing system becomes disrupted, nearly every major system in the body starts functioning less efficiently. Energy declines, cortisol becomes dysregulated, insulin sensitivity worsens, focus drops, mood changes, recovery slows, inflammation rises. And over time, chronic circadian disruption can significantly increase risk for metabolic dysfunction, cardiovascular disease, obesity, depression, cognitive decline, and accelerated aging. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every cell in your body operates according to biological timing signals called circadian rhythms. You have a master clock located in the brain, specifically in an area called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that clock coordinates thousands of smaller clocks throughout the body. These clocks regulate hormones, body temperature, metabolism, sleep-wake cycles, digestion, immune function, alertness, and even gene expression. The most powerful signal controlling this entire system is light, especially light entering the eyes early in the day. Now, when you rapidly cross time zones, work night shifts, stay awake at abnormal hours, or expose yourself to bright artificial light late at night, the brain receives conflicting timing information. The result is circadian misalignment. In simple terms, your internal clocks drift out of sync with the external environment. And when that happens, physiology suffers quickly. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine an orchestra where every musician is playing from a different sheet of music and following a different conductor. Even if each individual musician is talented, the system becomes chaotic. That's exactly what happens during jet lag and circadian disruption. Your hormones are operating on one schedule. Your digestive system is operating on another. Your brain wants sleep while your environment demands wakefulness. And the nervous system becomes physiologically confused. Now, this matters enormously because sleep is not passive rest. Sleep is active biological repair. During deep sleep and REM sleep, the body regulates dopamine sensitivity, insulin function, emotional processing, immune repair, memory consolidation, and nervous system recovery. And when circadian timing becomes disrupted repeatedly, recovery quality declines dramatically, even if total sleep duration looks adequate on paper. What the research shows is that circadian disruption affects far more than fatigue. It impacts glucose regulation, appetite hormones, cortisol rhythms, mitochondrial function, reaction time, mood stability, and long-term brain health. This is why chronic shift workers often experience higher rates of metabolic disease and burnout over time. But the encouraging part is this: your circadian system is highly trainable. And once you understand the biology behind light exposure, temperature, food timing, movement, melatonin, and nervous system regulation, you can dramatically reduce jet lag, improve shift work recovery, and restore healthier sleep patterns naturally. Today, we're going to break down how the circadian clock actually works, why light exposure controls energy and sleep, how cortisol and melatonin influence timing, why shift work disrupts metabolism, how to recover faster from jet lag, and practical neuroscience-based protocols for improving alertness, recovery, and sleep quality naturally. Because once you understand circadian biology, you stop fighting your body's timing system and start working with it instead. The first major thing to understand about jet lag and shift work is that your body does not actually know what time it is from clocks. It knows time through environmental signals, and the most powerful signal by far is light. Here's what's really going on inside your brain. Deep in the hypothalamus is a small cluster of neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, often called the master circadian clock. This clock receives direct input from specialized light-sensitive cells in the retina. And those cells are especially responsive to blue-enriched light from sunlight. When light enters the eyes early in the day, the brain receives a signal that essentially says, "It's morning. Increase alertness. Raise cortisol appropriately. Suppress melatonin. Increase body temperature. Prepare for activity." Then later at night, darkness sends the opposite message. Reduce alertness. Increase melatonin. Lower core body temperature. Prepare for sleep and recovery. This timing system evolved over millions of years. The problem is that modern life constantly disrupts it. Artificial lighting, screens late at night, night shift work, crossing time zones rapidly, sleeping at irregular hours, all of these confuse the master clock. And when the master clock becomes confused, downstream systems become dysregulated too. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine the circadian clock like the conductor of an orchestra. The conductor sets timing for every section. If the conductor suddenly changes tempo unpredictably, every musician becomes misaligned. That's what circadian disruption does to the body. Cortisol timing shifts. melatonin release becomes inconsistent, digestion becomes impaired, energy production declines, and sleep quality deteriorates. Now, one of the most important hormones involved here is cortisol. Cortisol is often misunderstood as a stress hormone, but healthy cortisol is essential. You want cortisol elevated in the morning. That morning, cortisol pulse helps increase alertness, motivation, reaction time, and metabolic readiness. But cortisol is supposed to decline gradually throughout the day. When people experience jet lag or shift work, this rhythm often becomes inverted or flattened. And that creates major problems. People feel exhausted in the morning, but wired late at night. Their brain becomes biologically confused about when to be awake and when to recover. Now, another critical hormone is melatonin. Melatonin is not technically a sleep hormone. It's a darkness signal. Melatonin tells the body it is nighttime. Light exposure at night suppresses melatonin production significantly. This is why bright overhead lighting, phones, tablets, and screens late at night can impair sleep quality even if someone feels tired. The brain interprets artificial light as a daytime signal. Now, here's where jet lag becomes especially interesting biologically. Different systems in the body adjust to new time zones at different speeds. The brain clock may partially adapt in a few days, but digestion, hormones, and peripheral tissues often adapt more slowly. This is why people frequently experience digestive discomfort, appetite changes, constipation, brain fog, fatigue, poor concentration, mood instability. Even after they technically arrive somewhere, the body's internal clocks are still desynchronized. Research consistently shows eastward travel is often harder than westward travel. Why? Because advancing the body clock earlier is biologically more difficult than delaying it slightly. In simple terms, it's usually easier to stay awake later than force yourself to sleep earlier. Now let's talk about shift work specifically. Shift workers face one of the hardest biological challenges because they're repeatedly asking the nervous system to override deeply programmed circadian signals. The body naturally expects darkness at night and light during the day. When people work overnight under bright artificial lighting and then attempt sleeping during daylight hours, melatonin timing becomes disrupted significantly. And importantly, daytime sleep is often lighter and less restorative. Noise increases. Light exposure increases. Body temperature rhythms remain misaligned. This is one reason many shift workers experience chronic fatigue despite technically spending enough hours in bed. The sleep quality itself becomes compromised. Now, what the research shows is that circadian misalignment also affects metabolism powerfully. Insulin sensitivity declines during biological nighttime. Glucose tolerance worsens. This means eating large meals late at night often produces poorer metabolic responses compared to eating the same meals earlier in the day. This helps explain why chronic shift work is associated with increased risk of weight gain, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and mood disorders. Now, here's the encouraging part. The circadian system responds remarkably well to consistent signals. And one of the fastest ways to begin resetting the body clock is strategic light exposure. Morning sunlight exposure is incredibly powerful. Even 5 to 15 minutes of outdoor light shortly after waking can significantly improve circadian alignment, especially within the first hour after waking. Sunlight helps anchor cortisol rhythms, improve alertness, support dopamine regulation, and improve nighttime melatonin release later in the evening. And importantly, outdoor sunlight is dramatically brighter than indoor lighting, even on cloudy days. Now, another highly effective strategy involves reducing bright artificial light at night, especially overhead lighting. Warmer, dimmer lighting in the evening helps signal safety and nighttime physiology to the nervous system. This improves melatonin timing naturally. For travelers, one of the most powerful tools is adjusting light exposure according to destination time zones. If traveling east, get early morning light exposure at the destination. If traveling west, get later afternoon or evening light exposure strategically. Because ultimately, the brain uses light to determine biological time. And once you understand that, you can begin intentionally shifting your internal clock instead of constantly fighting against it. One of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to fix jet lag, shift work fatigue, or chronic sleeplessness is focusing only on sleep duration. But biologically, timing matters just as much as quantity. Because your nervous system does not simply care about how long you sleep. It cares about when sleep occurs relative to your circadian rhythm. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your brain operates through carefully timed cycles of hormones, neurotransmitters, body temperature changes, and metabolic processes. And one of the most powerful regulators of sleep timing is core body temperature. Most people don't realize this, but your body temperature naturally drops before sleep and rises before waking. That temperature rhythm acts almost like an internal timing signal for the brain. Now, this becomes extremely important for people dealing with jet lag or shift work, because crossing time zones or staying awake overnight disrupts not only sleep timing, but body temperature rhythms as well. And when temperature rhythms become misaligned, sleep quality declines dramatically. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your circadian rhythm like a train schedule. Hormones, digestion, alertness, and sleep are all supposed to arrive at specific stations at specific times. Jet lag and shift work throw the entire schedule off. The train still runs, but everything becomes delayed, mistimed, and inefficient. Now, one of the most effective ways to reset circadian timing faster is through strategic control of light, temperature, food timing, and movement. These are called Zeitgebers, or biological time cues. Light is the strongest cue, but it's not the only one. Food timing matters too. Exercise timing matters. Temperature exposure matters. Sleep consistency matters. Now let's talk about meal timing, because this is one of the most overlooked aspects of circadian biology. Peripheral clocks throughout the body, especially in the liver, pancreas, and digestive system, respond strongly to feeding schedules. When people eat large meals at biologically inappropriate times, circadian disruption worsens. Research consistently shows glucose tolerance and insulin sensitivity are generally better earlier in the day than late at night. This means nighttime eating during shift work often creates larger glucose spikes and poorer metabolic responses. And over time, this contributes to weight gain, insulin resistance, inflammation, energy instability, and poor recovery. Now, this does not mean shift workers can never eat at night, but meal timing should be managed intelligently. A practical strategy for many night shift workers is minimizing very large, heavy meals during the biological night and focusing more on lighter, protein-rich meals when possible. This often improves energy stability and reduces digestive discomfort significantly. Now, another major issue affecting shift workers is caffeine timing. Caffeine can absolutely improve alertness temporarily, but many people use caffeine in ways that worsen circadian disruption long-term. Here's why. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors. Adenosine is one of the chemicals that creates sleep pressure throughout the day. When caffeine blocks adenosine, fatigue temporarily decreases. But if caffeine is consumed too late, sleep quality often declines even if someone technically falls asleep. And poor sleep then increases reliance on more caffeine the next day. This creates a vicious cycle. Fatigue leads to caffeine, leads to poor sleep, leads to more fatigue, leads to more caffeine. Now, what the research shows is that caffeine consumed even 8 to 10 hours before bedtime may impair sleep quality in sensitive individuals. This becomes especially problematic in shift workers already struggling with circadian misalignment. A highly effective protocol is strategic caffeine timing. Use caffeine earlier in the wake cycle when possible. Avoid large doses late in the shift unless absolutely necessary. And gradually reduce intake toward the intended sleep window. Now let's discuss naps. Naps can be extremely powerful for recovery and cognitive performance, but timing matters enormously. Short naps of approximately 20 to 30 minutes often improve alertness without causing severe sleep inertia. Longer naps may push the brain into deeper sleep stages, making waking much harder. For shift workers, strategic naps before overnight work can significantly improve reaction time and mental performance. Even brief sleep periods can reduce accumulated sleep pressure. Now, another powerful circadian reset tool is exercise. Movement strongly influences body temperature, cortisol rhythms, dopamine signaling, and metabolic health. Exercise earlier in the wake period often improves alertness and circadian alignment. But extremely intense exercise very close to bedtime may impair sleep in some individuals by elevating adrenaline and core body temperature. Now, here's an incredibly important point about sleeplessness. Many people with insomnia become trapped in performance anxiety around sleep itself. They start monitoring, how many hours did I get? What if I can't sleep? How tired will I feel tomorrow? And that anxiety activates the sympathetic nervous system even more. The harder they try to force sleep, the more alert the brain becomes. Because sleep is not something you force. Sleep is something you allow. The nervous system must perceive enough safety for sleep physiology to emerge naturally. This is why nervous system downregulation is so important before bed. A practical evening protocol could include dim lighting, reduced screen exposure, cooler room temperature, breathing exercises, NSDR or meditation, light stretching, reading physical books instead of stimulating digital content. All of these help shift the nervous system toward parasympathetic dominance. Now, another powerful tool for adjusting circadian timing is temperature exposure. A cooler sleeping environment generally improves sleep quality because the brain associates slight temperature reduction with nighttime physiology. Most research suggests a cool room supports deeper sleep architecture more effectively than overly warm environments. Now, for travelers specifically, one highly effective strategy is shifting behavior toward destination time immediately. That means eating according to destination time, seeking light according to destination time, sleeping according to destination time, even if adaptation feels uncomfortable initially, because consistency accelerates circadian adjustment. And here's the key insight. Your circadian system is constantly searching for timing signals. The more consistently you provide those signals, the faster your biology begins adapting. One of the most important and most overlooked aspects of defeating jet lag, shift work fatigue, and sleeplessness is understanding the relationship between the nervous system and recovery. Because many people assume sleep problems are purely about sleep, but often the real issue is hyperarousal of the nervous system. In simple terms, the brain no longer knows how to shift fully into recovery mode. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your autonomic nervous system has two primary branches. The sympathetic nervous system, associated with alertness, stress, action, and survival, and the parasympathetic nervous system, associated with recovery, digestion, repair, and sleep. Healthy physiology requires flexibility between the two. The body should activate during the day and downshift at night. But modern life keeps many people trapped in chronic sympathetic activation, constant notifications, artificial light, stress, shift work, travel, late night stimulation, poor sleep, excess caffeine, psychological stress. All of these keep the nervous system in a state of low-grade vigilance. And biologically, a vigilant brain does not sleep deeply. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine trying to park a car while constantly pressing the accelerator. That's what chronic stress physiology does to sleep. The body attempts to rest, but stress chemistry keeps pushing wakefulness signals underneath. Now, this becomes especially severe during jet lag and overnight shift work because the body receives conflicting signals simultaneously. The circadian clock may be saying, sleep, but artificial light, caffeine, movement, stress hormones, and work demands are signaling, stay awake. Over time, the nervous system loses rhythmic predictability. And rhythmic predictability is essential for healthy sleep architecture. Now, one of the major systems disrupted here is dopamine regulation. Dopamine helps maintain alertness and motivation, but chronic circadian disruption alters dopamine rhythms significantly. This is why many sleep-deprived individuals feel mentally flat, unmotivated, emotionally blunted, unable to focus. The nervous system becomes both overstimulated and exhausted simultaneously. Now, another major factor is inflammation. What the research shows is that chronic circadian disruption increases inflammatory signaling throughout the body. Sleep restriction elevates inflammatory cytokines, impairs immune function, and worsens metabolic regulation. This helps explain why long-term shift workers often experience increased risk for obesity, depression, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and cognitive decline, because sleep is not optional recovery. Sleep is active biological maintenance. Now let's discuss one of the most powerful tools for nervous system recovery, non-sleep deep rest, or NSDR. Protocols like yoga nidra, breathwork, and guided deep relaxation help shift the nervous system toward parasympathetic activation. These practices reduce sympathetic tone and help restore autonomic balance. And importantly, NSDR can partially offset some cognitive deficits associated with sleep loss. Even short sessions may improve dopamine regulation, stress reduction, and mental recovery. For shift workers especially, NSDR can be incredibly valuable after overnight work or before daytime sleep. Now, breathing patterns matter enormously too. Fast, shallow breathing tends to increase sympathetic activation. Slow, controlled breathing increases parasympathetic activity through vagal pathways. One particularly effective protocol is cyclic physiological sighing. 2 short inhales through the nose, followed by a long, slow exhale. This pattern helps reduce stress rapidly and downregulate nervous system activation. Now, another overlooked issue is light exposure during nighttime awakenings. Many people wake during the night and immediately expose themselves to bright overhead lighting or phones. That light suppresses melatonin quickly and signals wakefulness to the brain. A better strategy: use dim, low-level lighting if necessary. Avoid strong blue-white light exposure during nighttime awakenings. Now let's talk about alcohol because this is extremely important. Many people use alcohol to help initiate sleep during jet lag or insomnia. And while alcohol may increase sedation temporarily, it significantly impairs sleep architecture. REM sleep becomes disrupted. Heart rate increases, body temperature regulation worsens, recovery quality declines. In simple terms, alcohol often helps unconsciousness more than true restorative sleep. Now, another major consideration is consistency. The circadian system thrives on predictable patterns. Consistent sleep timing, consistent light exposure, consistent meal timing, consistent wake times. Even partial consistency improves circadian alignment substantially. This is one reason rotating shift schedules are often harder physiologically than stable schedules. The nervous system never fully adapts before timing changes again. Now, for travelers, one of the fastest ways to reduce jet lag is controlling light exposure aggressively during the first 24 to 48 hours after arrival. Morning light advances the body clock earlier. Evening light delays it later. And importantly, avoiding light at the wrong time matters too, because the circadian system responds not only to what you do, but when you do it. Now, here's one of the most powerful mindset shifts for improving sleep. Stop trying to force perfect sleep every night. Sleep becomes worse when the brain associates bedtime with pressure, frustration, and performance anxiety. Instead, focus on creating conditions that support sleep naturally. Darkness, cool temperature, consistent timing, calm breathing, reduced stimulation, light management, stable routines. The nervous system responds strongly to safety and predictability. And over time, consistency rebuilds circadian stability remarkably well. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day focused on neuroscience, metabolism, hormonal health, recovery, and science-based tools for optimizing the brain and body naturally. Because once you understand circadian biology and nervous system regulation, you stop blaming yourself for poor sleep and start understanding the physiology driving it. Now let's talk about the practical side of rebuilding healthy sleep and circadian rhythm in real life. Because information only matters if you can apply it consistently. And one of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to hack sleep with supplements while ignoring the daily behaviors that control the nervous system. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your circadian system constantly responds to signals like light, food, movement, stress, temperature, and sleep timing. These signals tell the brain when to feel alert and when to recover. The more consistent these signals become, the more stable your sleep and energy usually become. Now, one of the most powerful tools for improving sleep is maintaining a consistent wake-up time. Most people focus only on bedtime, but biologically, wake time is often even more important because it helps regulate cortisol, body temperature, and melatonin rhythms. In simple terms, the body thrives on predictability. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine resetting a clock at the same time every morning. Eventually, the system stabilizes, but if wake times constantly shift, the circadian clock struggles to stay aligned. This becomes especially important for shift workers and frequent travelers. Perfect sleep schedules may not always be possible, but consistency still improves physiology dramatically. Now, another powerful tool is morning movement. Even light exercise after waking increases dopamine, circulation, alertness, and nervous system activation. Walking outdoors is especially effective because it combines movement with sunlight exposure, one of the strongest circadian signals for the brain. Now let's discuss metabolic health. Large blood sugar swings at night can disrupt sleep quality and increase nighttime awakenings. This is why many people sleep better when evening meals are moderate in size and lower in excessive sugar. Another important issue is sleep debt. Many people think they can catch up on weekends after poor sleep during the week. But research shows chronic sleep deprivation accumulates over time and affects focus, metabolism, reaction time, and emotional regulation more than most people realize. Now let's briefly discuss melatonin. Melatonin is not a sleeping pill. It's a timing signal. Low-dose melatonin can sometimes help with jet lag or schedule adjustment, but behavior and light exposure remain the real foundation of circadian health. Now here's another critical point. Your brain associates environments with behaviors. If you constantly work, scroll on your phone, or watch stimulating content in bed, the nervous system weakens its association between bed and sleep. That's why improving sleep often means strengthening the brain's connection between bed and recovery again. Now, for jet lag specifically, one of the best strategies is adapting to local time quickly. Get sunlight at the appropriate local morning time. Stay hydrated, move your body, and avoid excessive nighttime light exposure after arrival. Because ultimately, circadian health is not only about sleep. It's about timing your biology correctly. Your hormones, metabolism, focus, mood, recovery, and energy systems all operate on internal timing mechanisms. And when those rhythms become aligned, the brain and body perform far more efficiently. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day focused on neuroscience, metabolism, recovery, sleep, and science-based tools for optimizing the brain and body naturally. Because once you learn how to work with your biology instead of against it, better energy, deeper sleep, and stronger recovery become far more achievable naturally. So when we step back and look at the bigger picture, one thing becomes very clear. Jet lag, shift work, and sleeplessness are not simply problems of being tired. They are problems of circadian misalignment. Your brain and body are designed to operate according to biological timing signals. And when those signals become disrupted repeatedly, nearly every major system in the body begins functioning less efficiently. Today, we talked about how the circadian system regulates hormones, metabolism, alertness, recovery, immune function, and nervous system performance. We explored how light acts as the primary controller of the master biological clock and why morning sunlight is one of the most powerful tools for improving sleep and energy naturally. We discussed how cortisol and melatonin work together to regulate wakefulness and recovery. We covered why shift work and jet lag impair glucose regulation, dopamine signaling, focus, mood, and metabolic health. And we examined practical neuroscience-based tools for restoring circadian alignment through light timing, meal timing, movement, temperature control, hydration, strategic caffeine use, and nervous system regulation. Because ultimately, sleep is not only about duration, it's about timing biology correctly. The nervous system wants rhythm, predictability, consistency. And when you repeatedly provide those signals, the body begins adapting remarkably well. Now, one of the most important ideas from this entire discussion is this. You cannot completely override biology forever without consequences. Many people try. They rely on caffeine instead of recovery, artificial light instead of circadian alignment, stimulation instead of restoration. But eventually, the nervous system keeps score, fatigue accumulates, focus declines, stress tolerance worsens, metabolic health suffers, recovery becomes impaired. This is why protecting circadian health is not just about sleep. It's about long-term brain function, hormonal balance, emotional regulation, immune resilience, and healthy aging. Now, the encouraging part is that small changes can create powerful physiological improvements over time. Morning sunlight, consistent wake times, reducing nighttime light exposure, improving sleep environments, managing caffeine intelligently, prioritizing recovery after travel, using strategic naps and NSDR, supporting hydration and metabolic stability. None of these are extreme, but together they help restore alignment between the brain, hormones, and nervous system. And alignment creates resilience. Now here's my challenge for you. Choose just one circadian supporting behavior and apply it consistently for the next 7 days. Maybe it's getting sunlight after waking, reducing screens before bed, keeping a consistent wake time, improving hydration during travel, or avoiding caffeine late in the day. Then observe how your body responds. Your energy, your focus, your sleep quality, your mood, your recovery. Because often people don't realize how dysregulated their nervous system has become until they finally experience what healthy circadian rhythm feels like again. And remember, the body is constantly communicating through symptoms. Fatigue is communication. Insomnia is communication. Brain fog is communication. Poor recovery is communication. The goal is not simply masking symptoms. The goal is understanding the physiology underneath them. Because once you understand circadian biology, you begin working with your nervous system instead of constantly fighting against it. If this video added value, like the video and subscribe to join others optimizing their brain, metabolism, recovery, sleep, and long-term health naturally through science-backed tools and practical neuroscience. And as always, thank you for watching.